Make your way out. Kids, you can get out of here. Yeah. Nice. Just all the way. The chaos. Love it. Well, it's great that the weather has turned. Everyone still tells me, oh, don't worry, it's going to snow. And I don't believe you. I never believe you. And then it snows, and then I'm disappointed. And it's problematic. But there's one other thing I want to make you all aware of. I have a sign-up sheet. And through the summer, I want to try something. I've really been thinking about what does it look like for this community to get to know one another. Because it's a small community, but to be honest, I have seen a lot of people sit in their homes and say, don't talk to me. Not actually, but in culture, society, we're I'm fine just to sit in my house and be with myself and maybe my one other person and not expand past that. And listen, I'm no different. Maybe I have also been bad at this, but I'm, been thinking about what does it look like to bring a church together, a people of God? And so I'm calling this the village table, okay? Because we're the village, we're the village of God, right? You've heard the saying, raising kids takes a village maybe raising adults takes a village as well, probably. And so the village table, what it will be is if you can host, if you have a big space or you like to cook or whatever, you can go out and there's going to be the sheet after at the potluck. You can sign up and write, I want to host. I will host, okay? And then if you want to attend a free dinner, you can bring your kids too. It's going to be mayhem. So if you want to attend the dinner, you can write, I want to attend. I want to just show up at someone's house and experience their home and their hospitality and eat a meal. And I will provide, don't worry guys, I will provide questions and, thoughtful things to talk about me from the sermon. And it's not all going to be on you guys to make conversation because I know it's hard. Conversation is tricky. So there will be guided questions that actually hopefully bring us together. And so this is the village table that I want our church to become a village. I think there's people here that don't even know each other, and there's only 50 people in this room. That blows my mind. Maybe myself, right? I'm not excluded. And so I will probably be attending one of your homes and getting a free meal because I don't want to cook. No, it's not about that. It's about the community aspect. So village table. So I would love for you, please don't be shy. Sign up. If you want to host, write down, I'll host. If you want to attend, get to know, talk with one another, meet the people in this church community, encourage one another, maybe pray with one another, I want to attend. And then my job will be, I'm just going to put people with a host. And I'll let you know the days, and we'll go from there. And I think it could be this amazing, great opportunity to actually deepen relationships in this space. So please consider that. I would love for the whole church even to sign up. That would be crazy, but that doesn't have to happen. So let's catch up to where we've been, okay? Because I missed last week, so I got to catch up. And we can imagine Jesus, okay? He's gone up this mount, the Sermon on the Mount, and there's this hillside that's going underneath him, declining, and there's a group of disciples, his disciples, but also a crowd, disciples, sitting, and he is teaching them. So these are like hey, Jesus, what's your greatest teachings? What's your one-liners of all the stuff you've been talking about? And he says, let me compile it into a sermon for you. And so this is what he's doing. He's teaching them, and they're listening underneath of him. And he starts with the Beatitudes, okay? Beatitudes, this is what my kingdom looks like. You think it looks like pride? You think it looks like success? You think it looks like obtaining enough and being enough? Well, guess what? It's actually about humility. It's actually about an upside-down kingdom, right? That's what we call it. That everything we think is successful in life, he says, actually, it's the opposite. So go low, humble, pursue the meek. This is what he says. And then he goes, you are salt and light. If you're people of the kingdom, it's an assumption, right? We talked about how he says you can be these things. He says you will be salt and light. If you're a person of the kingdom of Jesus, you will be salt and light, flavorful, bringing light to the world, people around you. And he said that law as well, that law you follow so closely, well, guess what? Everything you're upholding in your life, I am filling it full. It all pointed to me, and I'm making it full. And he goes through 6 examples of the old law, the Old Testament law, of what it means to fill full that law. And so that's what we've been looking at. That's where we are. And we've been hearing this phrase, you've heard it said. You've heard it said. And so basically what he's saying to the people of the time that he's teaching, but also to you and to me, he's saying, you have misconceptions about life and truth. You think this way, but guess what? I tell you this way. You think you have this figured out, but guess what? I am telling you this way. And he's basically saying you've been taught wrong, you've learned wrong, you're not understanding this correctly. So let me tell you what this means, right? So you might not murder, right? Easy enough. But do you harbor anger? You've murdered someone in your heart. And last week, Todd preached on adultery and lust, right? Lust, men in the room, I guarantee you love to lust. Woman, there was a fireman convention going on. I don't know. There's mustaches and muscles out there, so you're all there like, honey, can you take the kids? I'm going to the fires. What? What do you mean? No. But he doesn't stop there. He doesn't stop at lust, adultery, right? Because we think adultery, I would never cheat, right? I've never cheated. I wouldn't do these things. Like, that's the full act of adultery. And he's talking about lust, and then he goes deeper, unfortunately. I'm sorry. He dives deeper every time. And he leans in, and this is what he talks about. He brings up marriage and divorce. Marriage and divorce. And so before we go into this, I just want to acknowledge this is a hard topic for most people. Even if you're happily married, whatever your status of life is, it's personal, it's relational. And so I understand there's sensitivity here around marriage, around divorce. And so if by the end of this you're thinking, I just can't believe he would say that. I want to kill him. Please don't murder me in your heart, okay? Here's my goal. Honestly, from my heart, from the scripture, from Jesus' heart for you in your life, this is what I want to see. I want to see relationships and marriages that are thriving, that are growing, that are deep, that work through hard things, and ultimately honor God. That's what I want to see, and that's what Jesus was getting at when we go into this. So, he leans in. Hey, you might have adultery, if you're not even sleeping around, but you're lusting, but guess what? Let's go into the actual relationship of it. And he says this, it was also said, whoever divorces his wife must give her a written notice of divorce. And so maybe you're sitting here and you have been divorced or you've been around it, but let's just look at some of the reality of what divorce is, okay? Around 40 to 50% of marriages in Canada will end in divorce. That means that either 40 to 50% of you have been divorced or will be in this room. And that number doesn't really change in the church. It's pretty much across the board. And that doesn't even include common law relationships. And they're on the rise in Canada, right? About 25% of all couples are now common law in Canada, and they function as a household but are not in a committed marriage. So this stuff is everywhere. It's rampant, it's damaging, and it's seen as a foundation of sin in Jesus' eyes. And he's going hard into these issues, right? Like you think about anger and lust. We don't want to talk about these things. We just want to be able to ignore them. Let me just have my ideas, my perception, my life, how I've lived it out, and I'll just deal with God later at the pearly gates. And he says, not exactly. And so he quotes directly from the Torah, Deuteronomy 24:1, and this is what he's quoting. He says, when a man marries a woman, this was in the law, but she becomes displeasing to him because he finds something indecent about her, he may write her a divorce certificate, hand it to her, and send her away from his house. Now that's crazy. That's insane. Like, guys, imagine if you're at home, your wife maybe makes you a meal. I don't know what culture or demographic you were raised in. Sometimes I help cook. I don't know. But, they make the meal and they put too much salt, you say, man, that is just displeasing. Like, get out of my house. Here's your divorce certificate. I don't want to see you. Like, it could have been anything. This displeasing nature. And this is the problem. The issue with the law was the flesh, the desire of men, right? You're entrusting men to, like, judge things. It's like, man, you gained 2 pounds. Get out of here. I don't know. Your hair's short now. I don't think so. They were just divorcing people everywhere, right? And like Todd talked about last week, men in this culture and in every society afterward, we are, you're visual people. You're visual. You love to lust. We love it. We're like, well, what's the next best thing? Well, that's nice. Hey, this is great. Well, she looks good. And we're just impatient and we want what's new and amazing. And they were just divorcing people over anything. Woman, you're off the hook too. I know you guys lust too. I know it's there, like what we said about the fire guys. And so men in ancient Israel were lusting, rampant lusting, looking around, seeing what's there, something better, something enticing. And in this culture, women were second-class citizens. I'm sorry if that offends you. It's just what happened in culture and society. And so Israel needed this law because what was happening is men would marry their wife. They would find the dumbest thing to find displeasing about them and then just kick them to the curb and basically say, okay, go be homeless, go figure it out. Because if you were a woman, you needed a man to survive. You had to have someone who could provide, who could give you status, who could actually elevate you in the world. And so the law came around. They made this law in effort to actually conserve marriages, right? Because let's make a bit of a system here before we just get rid of people every 2 days because we don't like them. And it actually honored and lifted women up. So at least the husband had to go home, think about it. He had to get it written down, which writing was not easy in that day. Probably couldn't even write. They had to write it down, get this letter, bring it to her, give her this certificate, and then if she had that certificate, then she could remarry and not be living in adultery in the eyes of the society. It was a process. And this is what I love about Jesus. Or maybe you hate it, I don't know. He comes and he says, hey, you thought that was hard? You think that's tricky, going through the process and the relationship and, having to be intimate and connect? He says, guess what? Living in my kingdom is way harder. It's way harder. There's way more accountability. There's way more structure. I am raising the bar on everything you thought about your marriage and your relationships. And he says this, but I tell you, everyone who divorces his wife, except in a case of sexual immorality, causes her to commit adultery, and whoever marries a divorced woman commits adultery. So now here's the thing. You can't really talk about divorce without talking about marriage. You can't have divorce unless you've had a marriage, right? And so he's saying, this is what Jesus is saying, okay? It's not this casual thing. It's not a convenient thing. It's not do it till I'm done with it, or till something better comes along, or till I just need to do me in my life, or they don't satisfy me enough, or they're just not emotional enough for me, or we fight too much, or we don't fight at all. We don't really figure stuff out. Marriage isn't something that you just interchange easily. Jesus comes and says, guess what? This thing is for life. From the very start, Genesis 2, the intention for this union, you've heard this. When two become married, they become one flesh. Everything about you is now in them. Everything about them is now in you. One flesh. If you think you can have just this relationship and leave, you're wrong. And if you've been divorced, you know that. It takes something from you. I can't just cut my arm off and walk out the door and be okay. That's not how the world works. I can't rip my heart out and say, that's fine, I don't need it, or my stomach, right? I can't rip my body apart. And Jesus says, you are bound. You're one. You can't go without being torn apart, torn up. You are tied to this person. The deepest experience of relationship outside of God is in your marriage. You're tied in body, in mind, and in spirit. And Jesus is getting at this, okay? It matters deeply who you marry. And if you're in a marriage, it matters deeply how committed you are to it. It feels like often in culture we're just marrying, looks, first impressions maybe. That's always alarming. You talk to people, oh, like, when did you know you want to get married? Oh, the moment we met. I'm like, no, that's bad. If, you carry moment we met through 4 years, you're done. It's not going on. The abs or the body, they go away. They do. Their sense of humor. You're not marrying those things. Those are not foundational things. You go to weddings. Victoria and I go to weddings all the time because we do wedding photos and stuff, and I marry people and whatever. And they've really changed, right? A wedding used to be about the vow. It was this important aspect of you stand before people you love, before God. You vow that you will love, that you will invest, that you will become one, and that you get married. And now it's all about kind of the perfection and the expectations, right? And the bride is just perfect. The long dresses, flowing dresses. I don't know what's stylish anymore. I'm not married again. But, the perfect gowns, and the groom looks okay usually, not looking bad. And the vows are this amazing, I promise to make you breakfast in bed every day. And I'm going to, even when you do something annoying, I'm going to love you, I promise. And it's just baloney. It's a lie. No, you won't. No, you won't. Imagine if vows were real, okay? It's the real vow. I think that Victoria would rewrite her vows. She'd probably say something like, I promise to love you when you mumble every day, all day around the house. And all she does all day is, what did you say? What did you say? What did you say? Levi! That's our relationship now, okay? Because the reality of life sets in. Right? Things get real. And I'm annoying when things get real. And Jesus says, guess what? You better stick with it. You better invest. You better be ready to say, well, I made a vow. We are one. We're not separate. And Jesus wants his kingdom. If you say, hey, I'm a Christian, I want to live in the kingdom, to be people that are healthy, intentional, thoughtful relationships that grow in the context of marriage. Living together and having kids and family was never supposed to be out of convenience. Jesus says that these forms of relationship are for marriage. And you need to find out, hey, what's their personality like? And this is both ends. If you're getting married or you are married, who is this person? A lot of couples say, the stats say that when you're married, right, and you're, in it 5 years or say, and they say, well, they changed, right? They're different now. They're changing. And all the stats say, well, do you know why they're changing? Because they live in close proximity to you. That's why they change, right? What are they like? How do they change? How do they grow? It's not just physical attraction. This is my one advice I'll ever give anyone who gets married. What do other people say about them around them, right? What do people say about them? Who are they in private? Who are they when with the guys? Who are they when they're at work? Who are they with their family? It matters so deeply about who you marry because it's not just convenience. In fact, it's a real commitment in marriage. And sometimes marriage is inconvenient. It might be the most inconvenient thing in your life, right? Because you're bound. You're all in. You've made an oath. A vow to this person, thick or thin, snoring or not, weight gain or not, fighting or not. The list goes on. You are bound. I would be lying if there hasn't been days when I woke up and Victoria and I are doing well and I say, man, it would be easy to give up. I'm bound to her. Flesh and blood. From the intention and the purpose of health and before God, this is what Jesus says. He says, actually, it's adultery. Actually, it's adultery. And what I want, what I desire, is to put the bar so high that I want you to be in committed marriages where two people come together before people who love them, before a culture that has said, I don't need that stuff. It doesn't matter before God, and make sacred covenantal vows that join you together in holy union, we call it, two flesh becoming one. And it's this declaration that I'm not choosing convenience, the easy route, the route where I don't have to have the wedding, telling yourself that it doesn't really matter for God or for faith, because it's not true. It's a lie from society. Jesus held a high standard of marriage. And he raises the bar, giving us a standard that actually creates this deep awareness of our partners and what Jesus said marriage should look like. And this is what he called it. He called it the bride of Christ. What does marriage look like? It looks like the church. That we are called the bride of Christ. That Jesus came and literally married his church through death on a cross, through the greatest vow, the greatest commitment. He says, your marriages are now a reflection of the fact of how incredible and amazing the reality is that you sit in life in this building when you know Jesus. I would marry you tomorrow. It doesn't need to be fancy or perfect, right? It doesn't have to cost $50,000. Some of these weddings, right? It's like, well, I need my flowers to cost $50,000. Victoria and I went to a wedding 2 years ago that was at this winery, like $500,000 for your wedding. Just go to a field and get your pay, right? It's the declaration, the vow. It's not about just how amazing, how perfect, how everything needs to be this thing. It's a relationship that says, hey, I've thought about this so much that I want it done before culture. In a union that represents Jesus and his church, a vow before God and people who love you, standing not in how the world perceives relationship, but at the bar that Jesus says, hey, this matters so much, and this is the only way that we can have them and not live in adultery with one another. This is what Jesus says. And then he also says in this very same sentence, your marriages are not just cohabitation. Your marriages are not just, well, I'm with this person, we have kids, so we stay together. Your marriages are not just, hey, it's convenient, so I stay. He says, actually, there's no way out of this. So you better dig in. You better figure it out. You better work hard. You better put the love in. Marriages are hard. If you've been married for any amount of time, it's a lie that it's easy. We all know that. You hop into the marriage and now you're with this other person. Jesus says that person will be the person, your intimate person forever. Figure it out. And this is the society that we live in, of convenience and selfish ambition, individuality. A society that thinks that we don't need traditional family values, marriage, the church, where relationship can be whatever we want them to be. There's interesting stats that come out. The stats on women, with their expectations of the men that they want to marry, are just, the gap is getting bigger and bigger. Men are kind of, and women are just like, well, I want the moon. It's getting bigger and bigger and bigger. And around the age of 30 to 35, we're almost at 30% of women say, well, I guess I will just never marry. It's just out of the picture. I don't need it. So women are kind of done with men. It's not surprising, right? It's not really surprising in this Neverland society of where we still have, 30, 40, 50-year-olds who act like they're a child. There's companies these days that will pay women to freeze their eggs so that they could just have a surrogate kid later on in life without the man. I can get my career, I can be successful, I can focus on myself, and then I'll just have a kid with myself one day. Like, this is what marriage has come to. This is what relationships coming to. And Jesus looks at the men of this time. He says, it's time to grow up. It's time to step up. It's time to invest. It's time to, hey, this woman in my life, I don't want to just discard her when I just don't feel like having her around, but actually make the most and cherish and love and adore and build up and have a thriving marriage. And that's what he wants for the church. That's what he wants for everyone in this room who's married or going to be married. Let's not be flippant with our lives and our relationships. This matters so much. But I tell you, everyone who divorces his wife except in case of sexual immorality causes her to commit adultery. And whoever marries a divorced woman commits adultery. So Jesus gives us one reason in this instance, and Paul expands a little bit on it later on. But he gives us one thing. He says, in the case of sexual immorality. And the modern translation of this, you might know this, the word is porneia. It's pornography. That's the modern translation. And this is different from adultery. So adultery, right, is like an affair, through and through affair with another person. Immorality, this is what it means, a selling off or surrendering of sexual purity of every type, including adultery. So it's really this pursuit of sexual pleasure. Pleasures beyond any means, whatever it might be, outside of your marriage. And he says, if this is present in your marriage, and this is the key factor, not that you should divorce, not that that should be the thing that breaks you, not that that should be an excuse, but he says you can. If you really have to, you could. But he doesn't want it because it's painful and it's messy. But he's saying, hey, in that circumstance, the party has left the covenantal relationship and broken that vow. But here's a bit of the reality of divorce in our world. What leads to it? A study done asked people who are divorced the driving factor of why. And this was interesting. They didn't say cheating. They didn't say fighting. They didn't say abuse. The leading cause, 75%, said that there was no commitment. So in plain, there was a lack of love. There's no commitment. They just stopped committing. They just stopped engaging. They just stopped investing. There was just a lack of commitment, lack of love. They no longer wanted to work on it. There's just no love. And so we throw away years of intimacy because we just lose a feeling. And maybe you're sitting here losing that feeling. And you're sitting here going, well, I just threw it away because it was too hard to work on. Or they didn't want to work on it. Or there was this problem. And when you lose that feeling, right, the foundation might be weak. You've never actually fully committed. That's what's interesting when they talk about common law relationships. They say statistically, when you just live together and practice marriage, essentially, you actually hold back. You do not give yourself completely as what they do in a covenantal vow. You're living in limbo. One person wants to be married, one doesn't. The kids might just keep you there, or have you just always been this way? And there's lots of studies around this, and the one that I've mentioned before is John Gottman. He labels this, if you experience one of the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse for your marriage, you are on a path to divorce. And it is a path outside of what Jesus gives us. It's a path of just saying, well, I'm kind of selfish, and therefore I need to be pleased in my relationship. And these are the things. He says criticism, defensism, said that weird, stonewalling, and the number one predictor of divorce, contempt. Contempt. Negative thoughts about your partner. They're never enough. The spark is gone. Can they do anything right? You ever said that about your partner? Can they do anything right? And eventually the love is gone, and the only thing that you have is a repressive view of their character and their very humanity. And people decide on this selfish ambition of, fill me up. Fill me up, partner. And this is the thing, is we put them up and we worship them. Be enough, do enough, make me feel enough. I just need you to fulfill everything in my life. Satisfy me. And we lack the love, and we say, if you don't do it, I hold you in contempt. I criticize. I'm defensive. I stonewall. I push you out, and eventually to divorce. A pastor named Craig Rochelle, he said this about love in marriage. He said, deciding you should get divorced because you've run out of love is like deciding you should sell your car because it's run out of gas. No reasonable person would ever do that. You simply put more gas in your car and go on. If your marriage love low light comes on, pull over, Start putting love back into your marriage. And once you filled it back up again, go on sowing. Jesus says, I don't want you to look for ways out. I don't want you to find the crutch that says, I'm done with this. I don't want you to say, hey, here's the ultimatum, fix this, or I'm done. I don't want any of that. Jesus says, you're here for life. If the love's not there, guess what? Start putting it back in. It can start with you, not the other person. You control yourself. If I'm frustrated with my wife, or I criticize, or I'm defensive, what I'm supposed to do is actually pray for her, love her, put the love in, buy her flowers, take her out, because that's what I can control. And I can pray and hope she does the same as we honor our oneness of flesh, the vow that we made. Jesus doesn't want us to find ways out. He wants you to find ways back in. Find ways back in. He raises the bar. He says, people in my kingdom are in wise marriages that don't look for an easy way out. Jesus pushes against culture, the lust, the non-commitment, the casual, the easy adultery. But this is what I want you to hear. This is what's so important as I kind of finish here is God doesn't condemn or hate you if you've been divorced. Are in divorced, maybe living in adultery, and another marriage, maybe with a rocky beginning. Here's what God hates. He hates the division and the pain and the messiness and the sin that comes from these relationships, that comes from divorce. But he deeply loves the person. He deeply loves you. He deeply wants restoration. Righteousness in the kingdom of God. Right relatedness. We are people with right relations in the world, especially in our deepest form of relationship. So this might be some of you. And this is the thing, I'm not saying to you, go get divorced. I'm not saying to you, go and just separate if you guys have been together forever. I'm not saying just abandon the kids and do all this. This is not what I'm saying, right? He does not desire for sin to be matched with sin. This is what I know, that 1 John 1:9, that if we confess our sin, he is faithful, righteous. He forgives us our sin. He cleanses us from all unrighteousness. And what Jesus is saying, hey, make it right. If you're living in adultery, make it right. If you're on your path to divorce, make it right. Lean in, put the love in, put the effort in, thrive in what I've given you as a construct of the deepest, most intimate, special relationship you'll ever have in your life. And when that happens, the church becomes embers of thriving marriages. That this church will be an attractive reality. That people look around and they see the connection, they see how people are intimate, how they're together, how they're one, how they've shared vision, and they say, man, what's different about that? That our oneness in marriage would push this church forward into the future of a culture that has said, it doesn't matter anymore. But when we say it doesn't matter, guess what happens? Satisfaction's down. People are lonelier. People are depressed, they're anxious. People have no hope in their home. People are just holding on. People are just roommates. There's no love anymore. We can move on to the better thing. And Jesus says, listen, actually, when you commit, when you're in it, when you're one, when you can't just cut your arm off and leave, when you can't just say, well, I'm on my path to divorce, when we start putting in, if our love low light is low, we will go into the future honoring God in our families with love, commitment, values, vision, believers, where ministry can explode because we have families on board with it. Marriages and couples going and saying, hey, you might be struggling. Let us come alongside you because we've been there. That's what Jesus wants for his church, for his marriages, for every single person in this room. Father, we just come before you humbly in a hard topic, maybe a convicting one. Just challenge us, Lord, that we maybe need to get married. Maybe we need to say, yes, I want to vow. I want to say before society, before you, before people, this matters more than so many other things in life of convenience. Maybe it's a marriage we're already in, God, that needs filling up because it's been low for a long time. God, might those relationships be filled? Might they pursue you? Might they honor you? We just are so thankful that you raise a bar and give us a standard of not just pain and confusion and convenience, but actually of one of the most gratifying relationships we can have. Lord, I ask that people here can experience that. They can relish in that. And that our marriages would thrive as we encourage one another, pray for one another, uphold one another, uplift, maybe challenge. And we'd see a church thrive through the family, Lord. Amen.